Hey, Piers, what's up?
How are you?
Good morning.
How you doing?
Welcome to the Opie and Anthony Show.
Take a seat. Contrary to popular belief, we are on the air.
And Kevin Smith.
People don't know this.
Kevin Smith to your left.
Hi, sir. How are you? Hey,
He was supposed to do your show tonight.
Yeah, we moved it to Los Angeles or something.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
And Jim Norton.
Yeah.
Hi. How are you?
Nice to see you. Piers Morgan.
Anthony, Opie, Sam, who cares? But
Yeah.
he's just doing
How's it been, man, taking over?
It's been great. It's when you take over a gig like the Larry King Show, it's a pretty amazing honour, a challenge. I mean, I've done about 15 shows. I feel absolutely exhausted.
Sure.
And someone said to me, "Larry did 7,000." Get over yourself. It's like it's a very relentless pace, but it's been great fun. I mean, Larry's been so nice to me about it all, and
we miss Larry just because he was kind of messing up at the end there.
no,
I know you're not going to say anything, Piers. I understand.
No, I'm not.
So let us say it.
He's one of my heroes.
It was fantastic TV that last year. Got a bunch of things wrong, man.
Really was fun to watch.
And when we heard he was retiring, we were a little bummed. Well, we're happy for you, though.
Thank you.
Because it made for great morning radio, some of those clips.
Well, I'll try and keep you filled with mistakes, don't worry.
Are you going to do all pre-tapes or any like political stuff like he did day of?
No, I mean, last week, every day was live on Egypt. And then before that, we had a few pre-tapes, a few live shows. I mean, I'm going to mix it all up because, I like to keep it unpredictable. Some will be pre-taped, some will be... I like it when you pre-tape, let's say Oprah Winfrey. We got it in the tape for about a week. You can then start leaking stuff out everywhere, and everyone's, we're a huge audience because we like to promote it. Right. So I'm not really sold on it has to be live for the sake of it. Sometimes live's good, but other times it's good.
And I'm paying attention, and I am watching. Oprah screwed you too. She had that half-sister thing in her back pocket.
I know.
She doesn't give it to you on CNN.
No, wait, it gets worse. I did the two interviews I did through the December into January were Elton John, who forgot to tell me he was about to have a baby. Didn't even tell me he was pregnant. And then I interviewed Oprah Winfrey, and so I went back on her show last week, and I went, "Can I ask you one more question?" And she went, "Yeah." I said, "I know it's a bit late because our interview's aired, but do you have any half-sisters called Patricia that I should know about? You just forgot to tell me about Oprah?"
That would have been a great first week for you if she gave you that news on your show.
You know what? She got huge ratings for us anyway, so it was a great week. But it's I didn't blame her. If I had my own network, I'd hold something like that back for it as well.
People are saying you were responsible for the whole Gervais controversy at the Golden Globes.
That I was to blame?
That you actually leaked out that there was a problem between the production staff and him, and him being mean-spirited, and that nobody really did care backstage, that it was you just fibbing.
No. I never said it. B, it's completely untrue. But C, had I thought of it, I definitely would have done it. Yeah. So.
Well, you got credit for it anyway, because that's what I read in a few things that.
No, my view is that the more mischief, the better. I subscribe to Oscar Wilde's great saying: "If there's one thing worse than being talked about, it is not being talked about." So, if people want to believe that kind of stuff, game on.
Yeah.
Do you think the media has gotten, because you were at the Mail and then there was pictures published that weren't, they turned out to be hoaxes?
Daily Mirror.
Right.
England,
I'm sorry, the Mirror.
Yeah.
Do you think it's gotten to a point where it's so competitive? There's so many, it's kind of gotten a bit tabloid where everybody's just rushing to get it first. And it's not just, it's every outlet, it seems.
The problem now is that news is, in the old days, you'd buy a newspaper to find out what had gone on. Now, as everyone's got iPads and computers and stuff, we all know what's happening in real time. I mean, I'm on Twitter feed with all these news organizations. That's all you need. On your phone, if you want to know what's happening, dum, 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 and it streams in. So the old reason for newspapers has disappeared. And it makes news unbelievably fast now. And it's dangerous. You're absolutely right to say that, because apart from anything else, technology is now so sophisticated, you can hoax anybody if you want to. With information, with pictures, with video. Everyone knows you can. You guys know better than most. You're in a studio where you can do whatever you like in here. So it's become much harder for news organizations generally. A, to compete, because news is just flashing around in real time. And B, because there's a lot of people out there that want to con you. It's hard.
Didn't they used to lose, like the news divisions always lost money years ago, and it seems like that they accepting that and going, well, news division's going to lose money has changed, and it became this
because it was in the public
we
interest,
have to get ratings.
Kind of
well, I think I have two views about this. I mean, one is that I think there was a bit of pomposity from news divisions in the past as well. It's like, we are serious news, and the only news that matters to people is serious news. I don't agree with that. I don't think the only news that we all want to wake up to every day has to be involving famine, death, disaster, and war. I just don't. And I think that there's a healthy balance to be struck. News is something that somewhere is a great quote that came out from, I think it was Lord Beaverbrook in England, who owned a lot of newspapers. News is something that someone somewhere doesn't want published. That's pretty much the yardstick. And, a newspaper at its best, or, any kind of news show, ought to always have that in mind. Whatever it is, it's something that somebody somewhere is going to be a little bit annoyed about. And then it's news, because then it's something out there that may have been suppressed otherwise.
I think it affects or at least it has affected the credibility of newsmen and newswomen, because in the old days you had Walter Cronkite, and he was actually out there not only broadcasting the news but collecting the news. He was on site, and then he'd come back and write his stuff.
Let me defend my news people, because last week I think you saw American news anchors at their absolute best. You had Anderson Cooper, Brian Williams, Katie Couric, Christian Amanpour, all these legendary names, all in the field in Egypt, getting physically attacked. Most of them. I mean, Anderson was attacked 3 times, and not just quietly tapped on the shoulder. He was punched in the head 10 times. His car was smashed in. These very, very dangerous environment. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do that. My brother's a British Army colonel, done just on a 7-month tour of Afghanistan. He can do it, but I can't do that kind of thing. And they are incredibly brave people, and so they still do that. And there's no more credible people to me than people like Anderson or Brian or Katie. So I don't think we've lost that. The thing that's changed, which people like Walter Cronkite never had to put up with, is the internet. And the internet is now spewing out information at such a speed, and it's very hard to disseminate real, proper, accurate news placed by good, responsible news organizations like CNN, for example, and the blogosphere, which is just spilling out a load of crap morning, noon, and night.
I think you get, for every 1 part news, you get 10 parts speculation, because that seems to be what a lot of the news channels are doing. And because of the internet, people want an answer immediately.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
Well, people also just have to fill space immediately. So you have people writing without even thinking about what they're writing. We were just up at Sundance 2 weeks ago. I went up, and in the midst of, it was a rather large, showy thing, I essentially said, hey, I'm going to keep my own movie, not spend any money to release it, try to release it without spending any marketing. That's it. I saw so many fucking pieces where, like, even in Entertainment Weekly, there was a dude that was just like, if Smith does this, there's a good chance he'll become part of the evil empire he hates so much. And I'm like,
what?
You didn't even think about what I fucking said. Like, how is me taking my movie out by myself related whatsoever to fucking some corporation or evil empire? Like,
fuck you, evil empire.
They don't even, they just write, and they're just like, well, Kevin likes Star Wars. People know Star Wars, and let's compare him to fucking Darth Vader somehow, even if it doesn't make sense, because next week it won't matter.
Right.
So that's kind of frustrating, man. You're right. There is a lot of, like, there's 1 part news, like 10 part fucking opinion.
Yeah, but also remember, people like us now, though, have options like Twitter and stuff.
Yeah,
and
we can go out there and spread our own
And you
truth.
can get out there. Someone spread some lie about you. You can get straight on Twitter and say, somebody said this, here's the truth. So actually, you can control your own message much better than you used to be able to.
But the truth's never nearly as entertaining, though, as the lie they put out.
That's true.
Yeah,
you used to be a slave to message boards that were completely run and maintained by other people who, whatever interest was theirs, that's what you had to deal with.
And by the way, if you ever saw these loonies, right, they'd be in some tiny dungeon, in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's not
and they'll be on their
That's
internet
not
going,
fair. Don't you fist pump. Motherfuckers don't. That's an old stereotype, man. I've seen a lot of these cats. They can get pussy. They can fucking, they can be charming. They're not like dudes dwelling or chicks dwelling in basements anymore.
I guess they could be if they wanted to.
Exactly. If they lost 600 pounds and left their house. But they tweet. It's amazing what personal information. Like, I had a relationship with Brooklyn Decker, and it's amazing. It's like the way that was. It was kind of cartooned and parodied.
Well, first of all, congratulations.
I'm just trying to start a little buzz about myself. Hoping it leaks.
I was furious when all the rumors about me and Scarlett Johansson hit the airwaves.
Yes.
It'd be wrong of me to try and deny that. I think it's not the kind of thing I talk about. But you see how it happens.
Yeah.
Now, immediately people listening to this, they get on Twitter and say, Piers and Scarlett Johansson, really? And before we know, I'll be denying it properly tomorrow.
Right. And then you'll be
Twitter.
like the man.
I like clearing up rumors that nobody has ever started. Like, I did not fuck her. Like, nobody thought you did.
Yeah, exactly.
No one questioned it, ass. So now, how did you get the gig? I mean, Larry King, obviously.
Well, a large amount of money had to change hands.
That's handy.
From me to them. No, it was. Look, I mean, Larry'd been there 25 years. I think he was looking to sort of semi-retire. He'd done, as I say, 7,000 shows in 25 years, an incredible career. and the ratings, as everybody knows, in prime time on CNN were not good, and I think they were looking for a change. And I do a big interview show back in Britain, which I've done for a few years. It's a big success, and they got the tapes in of those interviews, and they realised that I'm pretty comfortable interviewing politicians and celebrities and all that kind of thing. And so we had a few more meetings, and to my astonishment, I first talked to CNN about doing 1 or 2 specials with him. Next thing I know, I'm being offered the Larry King slot, which was an incredible thrill.
Well, I have a question for you about interviewing. When you go into an interview, what is your mindset like? Because there really is an art to getting information out of people.
Well, I was saying my brother, the army brother, has a saying, the 7 Ps, which is prior planning and preparation prevent piss poor performance. Yeah. So unlike Larry, who's great genius, and he really was a genius, was better walk in without much preparation. He didn't like to prepare too much and just have a conversation with people. Because he was radio trained, actually. You guys could do the same. You wouldn't need to prepare much. You could just, because you're such good talkers, you could just talk to people.
Babbling.
And you could ask them 3 or 4 questions, and before you know it, you know who they are and what they do. And that was Larry's great gift, was to have the art of a conversation. I'm much more journalistic because of my background as a newspaper editor. So I like to, when I interview you, I'll know more about you than A, you'd like me to, and B, than you
That's
probably
impossible. I'm so fucking candid, Piers. There's nothing out there that I'm like, how could you know that? I'll be telling you shit there.
Yeah,
that's good.
He lets it all out.
He'll be like, well, let's pull some of these pictures up. Fuck! He did find stuff.
That's Photoshop.
Damn it.
But what do you think when you're about to ask a question? Because sometimes we want to get information, but it's like you do think like, oh, I want the person to like me. And it's embarrassing to admit that feeling that at times you have, like you don't want to ask the question because you don't want them to get pissed off. What is your thought process when you're going to ask something, you're going to an area that you know they don't want to go into?
Well, you can't go in with a sledgehammer, and you have to be sensitive to the fact that they may be, touchy about this, as we would say back home, sort of, a little bit edgy. I think you have to tread cautiously. I always try and treat people with respect, but I try and be very direct. I think the thing that I do differently to Larry is maybe I might look someone straight in the eye when it's a difficult moment and just ask them straight. And often it gets the best answer. Often the people, in the back of their minds, they think, I don't want to go there. But actually, when they're actually confronted with it as a bald question, they often will start to talk about it.
But have you had publicists tell you, all right, this is off limits, don't mention,
they do,
this
but I
subject?
always say, okay, well, we'll test the water, We'll test the water. And so I had George Clooney on. And of course, always people are saying, don't get into private stuff. It's going to be about Sudan and stuff, which is a very interesting story. And I talked to him about all that. But I got his dad in to sit with me. And George is in LA on remote. And so rather than asking George about his private life, I asked the dad about George's private life. And that way, I'm not really contravening the agreement. I'm just circumnavigating
That's
it.
pretty smart.
Yeah.
That's
so
pretty smart.
I said, you've been married for 50
That's
years,
like when they
Nick.
took Pantangeli's brother into court in The Godfather. What the hell are you doing? Yeah, he's here to support his brother.
But it's quite good. I said to George's dad, Nick, I said, you've been married a long time. Would you like to see George get remarried?
Man,
I would,
that's
yeah. I
sneaky.
know.
That's a great way to do it.
Sneaky.
But it's amazing how publicists will tell you, even if a show on CNN or any other show, it's like that you can't ask certain questions.
Well, let me tell you, the thing is this. I think publicists dig a hole for themselves and for their clients when they put things off limits.
They're horrible.
It's like Oprah Winfrey walked through the door and she said, you can ask me absolutely anything you want. Let's get going. Howard Stern, exactly the same thing. And the favourite interviews I ever do with people, because I'm the same, you can ask me whatever you like. I don't have to answer. I don't have to tell you anything. But I think a journalist or an interviewer or anyone on radio, TV, newspapers, you should have the basic human right to ask somebody anything you want to ask them. And the moment you start putting limits on it, these people become less interesting. When I read a very controlled interview or see one on television where there's a big story about this person and they haven't talked about it, you know that the interviewer has been gagged or agreed to be gagged.
Absolutely.
It's boring. And the person looks more boring.
And it also, I think, when you give a chance to somebody to deny something or explain, like I would always want to be asked if something came up that was unpleasant, so they could hear my words on it instead of what was printed or what was said by other people. That's a great opportunity for the artists. But the publicists overprotect them.
Massively overprotective.
Getting back to Oprah, what did she say about the lesbian thing? I forgot.
Well, she'd already done all that with Barbara Walters, so and made it quite.
Did you go there a little bit?
Well, not really. Once someone has said in an interview 3
you don't
weeks
want to
before,
keep hammering.
A, I'm not a lesbian. B, I never have been, and I never even thought about being. She can't be more unequivocal. So, I would take her at face value. It's interesting. Her relationship with Gayle King is very interesting because she's the best friend she has in the world. But I genuinely think they are just incredibly close friends. I don't think they are lesbians. So, to me, it was a kind of, it's one of those stories stories the media would love to believe, and because Oprah had never really denied it, it sort of gets out there. But I honestly don't think. I think she tells the truth.
I'm actually doing Leno Friday, and Gayle King is the lead guest, and I'm just going to put my face in her dressing room and say, "Come on, is it true or bullshit? Come on."
That's the way to get to the bottom.
Yeah, and I'm not going to leave until they pull me away. It's going to be a really ugly moment.
Oh, and they will.
Hey, Piers, a lot of people concerned you're not going to be America's Got Talent anymore.
I'm staying on America's Got Talent.
That's my show.
Yeah,
that's
I love
how
that
I know
show.
you.
I love that show, and it's
you're a big fan of Prince Poppycock. I
love
saw.
Prince Poppycock. Although, yeah, he blew it, but he's.
I bet he did.
You were too rough on Chips Cooney, though. I have to say, Chips is a friend. I thought you were a little too hard on Chips
No,
Cooney.
he's another one that I didn't get Chips Cooney. He just wasn't funny.
He is though. It's a weird sarcastic attack on magic, which I really enjoy.
He was trying to be too ironic, you know. I mean, that's funny. Christina Aguilera repeating the lines of the Star Spangled Banner.
What happened?
She messed up the lyrics.
She repeated
But it wasn't like a lot of people were watching, so that's fine.
No, there was a lot of people watching.
She left out, or the Ramparts we watched.
Yeah.
She put in the previous line.
She did it twice.
Yeah,
the
she
same
did
line,
it twice.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
line.
So what would that be? Everyone has to go back to the beginning, sing the whole song.
But
We're
we're making
making
fun of her, and none of us could sing the song.
I think she went into What So Proudly We Hail. Twilight's Last.
But they won't hold paper.
Red Stripes,
They're afraid of looking bad, but it's like you look worse if you blow the song. Just hold a piece of paper or have a cheat sheet on your hand or a fucking teleprompter.
There's not a lot of
Yeah,
words.
they
in the
say,
song.
the Ramparts we won.
Practice 2 days before.
Dude, when you have 500 million people watch you, all your practice is out the window. Because I know she knows that. Yeah, I couldn't remember my own act if I had that many people.
Fucking teleprompter. They could
what about
pop
some
one
words?
right down there and by the monitors, and you could just look at it and then try.
Did people? What was the reaction? And people like, "Ow!"
Whoa!
Was there booing?
Yeah.
Kill her!
Yeah.
You know,
Did people react like
Yeah,
that?
some people were booing.
You stole that mistake from Lady Gaga. You know, they just yelled all that shit. Hey, is there anybody you want to interview that you have had problems getting access to? I mean, obviously Obama or certain foreign heads of state. Who do you really want?
Well, the great thing about CNN is you tend to get whoever you want, pretty much, because it has obviously a domestic audience here, but the global audience you can potentially get, especially as unlike with Larry's show, they're airing mine in prime time in all the territories. So in Europe and Asia and everything else, you can get it at 8, 9 p.m. at night. So the potential audience to a guest is huge. I mean, 300-400 million people potentially. And if you've got a brand that you want to get outside of America, it's a fantastic platform. Plus, you know, CNN, I'm not going to chew people up. It's like, you know, it's an intelligent news network. You want to have intelligent conversation with people, and you want them to emerge out of it wanting to do your show again, whilst you having a good time with them and hopefully getting some good stuff out of them. So, you know, we don't really have a problem with most people we've asked have come on.
What's the best interview you've ever seen? Like the one where you went, God damn it, I wish I had done that.
Frost Nixon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, David Frost is one of my great heroes because if you ever watch the tapes of that, the real ones, never mind the movie, but you know, they got about 30 hours on tape. But to finally get the confession that the whole of America wanted to hear, the whole world wanted
in the
to
fourth and final
in the final
meeting,
thing,
right?
you know, the drama building, and again, David Frost was never too antagonistic. He just kept probing, incredibly well researched, building up to this moment when finally they got the confession out of Nixon. I'm sorry. Yeah, and it was an amazing moment, and that's what I call a brilliant interview.
Do you think that he would have gotten that, though, had it not been for that call the night before that really threw Nixon for a loop?
I think that was definitely part of it, but you know, he wouldn't have got the call if David Frost, hadn't put $600,000 of his own money up in the early 70s. So you're talking several million now, because no network would put the money up to do it. And he put the money up, he got the result. I mean, that's an amazing thing to do. So that's why he's one of my heroes. I thought it was brilliant journalism.
And
I liked the movie, too.
Yeah,
and
great movie.
To think that a movie about an interview would be good is just astounding. I was like, let me check that out. And it was compelling, very
really
good.
compelling, yeah.
It was amazing to me that Nixon was so smart because he was, to avoid certain unpleasantries, didn't he just kind of filibuster? He just kept talking so Frost couldn't jump in. It was like, what a brilliant, seasoned guy.
It's a very political thing to do. You know, when politicians don't want to answer something, they just keep talking about something else, or they answer a question they'd rather answer.
Are you used to interviewing politicians?
Yeah, I interviewed. Funny enough, I interviewed Tony Blair last week on Egypt, and I interviewed him about 10 times in Britain when I was on the Daily Mirror. So I used to interview people when I was editor of the paper, but also I've done like 6-7 years of interviews in Britain.
He seems like a nice guy. Is he a nice guy?
You know what he is? Personally, he's an incredibly nice guy. He's very well mannered. He's very polite, very charming, everything else. I mean, I think he made a catastrophic mistake as far as Britain's concerned, with the Iraq War, which has tarnished his reputation there. Oddly, it kind of enhanced his reputation in America, where standing shoulder to shoulder with the Americans after 9/11 gave him this amazing cachet here. But, in Britain, for a Labour left-wing a politician like Blair becomes the party leader, then prime minister, to take us into war on a pretext of weapons of mass destruction that never turned up. It killed his reputation in Britain.
Yeah, but isn't that the case with an alliance like the United States and England? I think he almost had to. It's like it's almost like an obligation between both countries that we really have to kind of back each other up. It's this ever since, even before World War II. It's
I
just
think you're
become
right. Listen,
something
I think every Briton's instinct, honestly, would be to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Americans, because we view you as genuinely great allies of ours from the Second World War in particular onwards. We've always been together on these things. I think the problem with Iraq was nobody was quite sure why we were fighting that war. No one was sure. And, it seemed to... My brother had to do 2 tours of Iraq, so I had a vested interest in this.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. I didn't think he ever had weapons of mass destruction. I thought the whole thing was a pack of lies. If you want a regime change, say so. Just come out and say, well,
Right,
that.
yeah.
Then people can make their judgment about you based on whether that's a good idea or not. But, it's a dangerous thing. As we've seen with the Middle East right now, regime change is at its best when it's driven from the bottom by the people up.
Yeah.
That's how regimes ought to change.
You can't
when you start
force
going
the
in,
people.
forcing your freedom and democracy on countries that have a totally different system. Imagine how we'd feel. Imagine how America would feel if some other country woke up one day and said, we don't like the way you're being run. We're going to steam in with our military and we're going to enforce our beliefs on you. Trust me. How long is that going to last, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to be very careful. When you're as powerful as America and Britain allied with America, you've got to be very careful how you utilize that power.
Question 2, what do you think of David Cameron? I think he's my new favorite person in his remarks about
that was great.
Stop coddling Islamic extremists and stop handling them softly. It's like nobody talks that way, honestly. And
And I don't understand why, because I don't like extremists of any kind. I just think the word extremism is the most dangerous word in our language right now, because it's extremists that cause the problems. It's not Muslims that cause problems. It's Islamic fundamentalists who want to kill people that cause problems. And this is where Cameron, our British Prime Minister, was right to say that. And it's where you have to just be focused on who the enemy really is. It's incredibly dangerous when I see that idiot pastor burning the Quran recently, trying to make some fatuous point. All that's doing is whipping people up into hating Muslims. That's never going to help anything.
But do you think, though, that the problem I have with the media in general, and I'm generalizing, is the way they always, and politicians do it too, let's not jump to conclusions like Major Hassan is yelling Allahu Akbar and murdering people, and it's an act of Islamic extremism by a nut, and it's amazing how there is this fear of saying it, and the media doesn't want to say it, and politicians don't want to say it, and it's amazing the way people just will not address what the real problem is.
There's a stigma put on you the second you even address extremist Islam. Then you're tiptoeing around it so much because you're so scared of getting called out and being a Islamophobe.
It is, but the way to do this is that when you talk about these things, you have to talk about extremists generally. There are extreme Christians in this country who do wacky stuff, who want to harm people.
But is it really as much?
It sounds like an awesome time to plug Red State.
Yes. But I'm a Catholic. I was brought up a Catholic, and there are extreme Catholics that cause me extreme discomfort. And I think when you talk about extremism, talk about it and mention a few religions. Don't make it look like the only people you think are bad people in the world are Islamic fundamentalists.
But is the security at the airports and at malls and our train stations, are we really looking for Christian extremists and Catholic extremists, or are we looking for Islamic extremists, honestly?
I think the reality is, in terms of attacks on America, they've primarily come from Islamic fundamentalists on 9/11. That's what you're primarily dealing with. But don't tell me the only atrocities that happen in America are from fundamentalists.
No, you could look at Oklahoma City.
Right, we got McVeigh and Terry Nichols, sure.
But look at Arizona recently.
Sure, another nut. Absolutely, another nut.
Well, you're always going to get nuts that are just crazy without really a cause or anything. There is a cause that is buried in the Quran, in the religion itself, that translated or interpreted by a lot, it's not a lot, relatively speaking, to all of Islam, but I think a disproportionate number of people interpret it very violently. They go into conflict very violently.
But this is where my problem comes with this, because you can interpret a lot of the Bible as ordering you to go and kill people if you want to.
They do.
Right.
If you want to. And
Yeah.
You know, there are Christians out there, as much as there are Islamic fundamentalists, who will interpret passages of the Bible, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and go and kill people.
But then again, are we looking for people with vest bombs that are Catholic?
Well, I don't know about you, but on every plane I get, they search a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know, and that seems to be a waste of time.
Well, it may be, but you know,
thinking.
you have to. If I was controlling the security of America right now, I'd be bloody careful that I make sure everyone is checked. Because the next attack may well, by the way, come not in the shape of a Islamic fundamentalist, but it might be them, you know, recruiting somebody who is
the family going
normal.
The family going to Disney, really?
Well, you know something,
like that to me is a waste.
Hey, they could be
of time.
Chechens, but they'd be Muslims.
You know,
Yeah,
something
true.
stranger things have happened, and they're not the only ones that want to kill Americans or kill Britain.
But stranger things have happened, yes. But I'm not talking about a blanket overall guarantee nothing's ever going to happen again. But you got to play your averages.
Right, so you're
resources.
you're in charge of Homeland Security in this country. Would you have the kind of restrictive security we have at airports now or not? Or would you run the risk, and by the way, I phrase that very deliberately, would you run the risk that on your watch, tomorrow morning, because you relaxed the security regulations, another 9/11 happened in, say, Chicago?
I wouldn't have
Would you be the
relaxed-
guy that's prepared to relax them?
I wouldn't relax regulations. I would put resources where they belong and make it better by using profiling. Profiling's used all the time.
I read an article
And
about...
what happens if the only guy that actually ends up blowing up another plane turns out to be a guy like the guy in Arizona who wants to make a point?
Profiling doesn't guarantee anything, but it does
your
work.
profiling, which is very precise and very targeted, actually missed that guy because, hey, he's white and American.
But it would have
Then
missed
what
him.
happens?
It would have missed him anyway, Piers, because if people are being polite and not stopping certain people anyway, it's this phony politeness, and we're denying that something exists. And even though I know you're being very honest, but there's that asterisk people always put when they talk about Islamic extremism. What about Christians? What about this? But if you're talking about the Klan, nobody says, what about other groups? We know you're talking about a bunch of white pigs who are racist. Or when you talk about the mob, nobody talks about this one or that one. You're talking about the Russian mob, you talk about the Russians. We all know who we're addressing, but there is this phony politeness. And hey, guys, I don't see it when we all see it. And that's the dishonesty.
Well, Britain went through a long period when I was growing up. You know, the IRA in Britain, financed a lot of the time by Americans, by the way. You know, they were blowing up a lot of people in London, my home city, and everyone grew to hate everybody Irish. You know, if you had an Irish accent in London for a period of 20 years, you got beaten up, and it was horrible. In the end, we went and talked to the enemy. This is not an acceptable view in America, but British politicians went and talked to Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA. They sat down with Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, who regularly came to fundraise in New York, by the way, and they sat with them. They talked them through. They ended up releasing a lot of very bad guys, ended up promoting these people to be politicians in their own country. They actually preached freedom and democracy through killers. And in the end, guess what? We reached a place where the IRA stood down their arms, and we've had no outrages from the IRA in London, I think, in the last 15 years. This may be an unthinkable way for Americans to think, but the way to deal with the enemy sometimes is to go and sit down with them. Because we did that in England, and as a result, Irish people can I'm Irish. You can walk around London now and not be hated just because you have an Irish accent.
Fair enough, and that's a good point. Although I will say the difference is I don't think the IRA attacked commercial airliners. I think the IRA kept it...
The IRA blew up hundreds of people on the streets of London. It's all a question of degree. But you can multiply the numbers. The principle's the same. Wanton, extreme killers.
Fair enough.
But their goal
one question. I'm sorry, buddy. Did they?
No,
but when they were looking for IRA members, did they stop Americans? Did they stop people who they knew were Jews from Israel? Of course they didn't. They looked for who they knew they were looking for, and that's how you also go after something. Is if you're going to target people.
I think specific profiling, especially in terms of airliners, is an incredibly dangerous thing to be doing. I really do. I think the moment you only start frisking people you think might be Muslim fundamentalists.
No, I don't mean only.
You've got a big problem.
I don't mean only. But the primary part of it.
Where do you draw the line, though? How far do you go with it?
Common sense. And I think that, again, you're never going to get it 100% because sure there are Chechens and there are white people.
No, but it's easy for us to say around here. If you're the director of Homeland Security,
yes.
and you absolutely want to 100% prevent another atrocity in the airways, where do you draw the line with this profiling? Who are you not going to check?
You have to check. It doesn't mean by doing profiling, I'm not saying remove other checks. I am just saying when you get an instinct or a feeling about a guy and you see, stop pretending that you don't have that feeling. When 9/11 happened, we all knew who it was. When those London bombings happened, everybody knew what group, what religion, the profile. Everybody knew in 93 when the Trade Center was attacked who had done it. And again, there was a false one in Oklahoma. We thought it was Middle Eastern men, and we were wrong. It was McVeigh and Nichols. So I'm not saying it's 100%, but let's just stop this way we're bullshitting. We're all sitting in a room.
Well, coming back to your first point was a good one, which is that there should be no problem in political leaders like David Cameron or Barack Obama, talking specifically about Islamic fundamentalist extremists, where there is absolutely no doubt from their rhetoric that they want to kill people and kill lots of people. Where you're talking about that body of people, there should be absolutely no question. You go after them as hard as you can. But you've got to be very careful that in doing that, you don't alienate a whole population of Muslims.
I understand that, but also I would like to see a lot more outrage from the non-extreme Muslims, people that are just practicing the religion. They don't seem to really want to call out the extremists and say, wow, that is bad what they're doing. And also the point about the IRA, there was something to sit down and hammer out with them. What they wanted. They wanted their freedom. Now, when you have to sit with an enemy that just wants you dead because of your lifestyle, that's a little hard to find common ground.
Wait a minute. The IRA wanted British politicians dead.
Oh, they did, but
they tried
that
to kill
was to
Margaret
get their
Thatcher and her whole government. They killed some people.
Right, but that was to get what they wanted. They had an end to their means. They wanted
They actually had a political agenda. What he's saying is
Islamic
that
fundamentalists
Muslim extremists don't have a political agenda.
They have an agenda. They have an agenda.
It's like Independence Day. What do you want?
The end of what they see as the imperialistic West, which they believe propagates, these kind of Western values that they despise. It's a similar in their heads. They believe
women,
absolutely
the way they treat women, and the way we treat women, so they look at us as infidels, and we have to pay with our lives for it. How do you bargain with that kind of fanaticism?
The answer is you have to. I saw recently interviewed Rudy Giuliani, and he'd been meeting with a fairly extreme group and got a lot of flack for it. And I looked at it as a Brit who'd been through the whole IRA thing and thought, however unpalatable this is, actually at some point, somebody has to be brave enough to do this. You have to get inside the heads of these people and try and work out some kind of future which doesn't involve every Islamic fundamentalist wanting to kill Americans. Because if you don't, they're going to carry on doing it.
Yeah.
And you're going to carry on killing them. But in the end, there has to be an end to this. You've got to try and work together. The world's a small place now. But you look at merchants of China and India and Brazil and all these countries. America won't even be the biggest economy in 20 years' time. Yeah. So the days of being the only big beast in the jungle are over. And essentially, when I hear Americans talking badly about the Chinese, for example, the Chinese don't want to kill you. The Chinese want to do business with you. Yeah. They want to take your business, but they don't want to kill you. The Chinese ought to be really friends of America. And Americans should work with them. Apart from anything else, they own most of you. So it's like, but I really believe that. When I went to China recently, did a documentary on them, I got no sense of them wanting to be imperialistic militarily or to invade countries or anything like that. They are business people.
No, I think they've embraced their capitalistic side,
totally,
and realize, wow, we can be a part of the world economy.
And here's the key thing: they're not very religious. The Chinese, they don't have much religious factor to their thinking, and as a result, they don't actually want to kill people. They want to kill you in business. They want to be number one. They want to be top dogs.
Yeah.
I went to big towns in China where they have 90% of the world's duvets manufactured, or 85% of the world's buttons. That's what's going on in China. They're not worried so much about the military end of things. But when I've been in America, probably out of fear, and a certain degree it happens in Britain too, there's this real kind of, the Chinese are coming, they want to take us over. They don't. They want to take over your business. And that's where America has to work out very quickly how to take on the new challenge from these countries. Because if you don't, you're going to get economically flatlined by them.
Well, they also steal stuff too. It's like the one thing they can't make with Apple is the way they make the actual one piece of the computer. But the Chinese are like, well, fuck you. You don't want to do business? We'll take it. What are you going to do? Go to China and sue the communist government.
They don't recognize international.
Oh, they don't care.
I found a chateau that was being designed on the outskirts of Shanghai that was exactly the same as a chateau in Bordeaux in France, which is where my favourite wine is made. They'd flown in the top winemakers from Bordeaux, paying them vast sums of money. They had created exactly the same acreage of land. It looked exactly like this chateau in Bordeaux. They had the same climate in Shanghai pretty much as they get in northern France. And they reckon within 10 years they'll be producing wine of a standard of the great Château Lafite houses or Château Latour, and it'll be made by French experts in the middle of China.
Maybe they can import people who drive
By
well.
the way, and I say, rather than saying, isn't that terrible, I say, good on them.
That's
good on them. That's the kind of energy, drive, dynamism, and smart thinking that made America what it was. So for Americans to sit back and go, this is terrible. No, this is admirable. And actually, more Americans should stand up and say, I want to be more like... Here's the thing. I've got 3 sons. I was out with my 3 sons the other day, playing football, soccer, the real football. And I managed miraculously to score a good goal. All right, a bit of a David Beckham.
Well, how old are they? Are they like all...
17,
okay.
13, and 10.
I thought they were 4 and 6.
2, 4, and 6.
I did balls past 3 2-year-olds. Get out of the way, son. But I scored this great goal. And 2 of the 3 boys instantly went, Dad, that was so Chinese. And I stopped and I went, what did you say? I thought they were being racist, and because they all go to schools with lots of Chinese kids. I said, what did you mean by that? And they both started laughing and went, "Oh, Dad, we're not being racist. We meant that was really good. It was Chinese."
Oh, wow.
Now, if that isn't a moment to stop and think, if you're a Briton or an American, back in the early part of last century, that comment would have been, "You're so British." Right?
Yeah.
From the middle of the century onwards, that's so American.
Or Mighty Whitey. That was one for a long time.
But now it's, you're so Chinese.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about China, though. They sure love using our movies for their fighter plane exhibits and examples. They actually took a clip from Top Gun and said that this was their new fighter that they put out.
Really?
This is some test footage from our new fighter, and it was frame by frame
from the movie.
Oh God,
Kelly McGillis was in it.
It was one of the
This
models
is a pretty
being
lady.
shot.
She make play.
Yeah,
They did a split
She
screen.
also in Accused.
They did a split screen and it matched up perfectly.
Did they really?
They got caught.
They got caught.
They're very discerning in China. I took around pictures of Barack Obama, the British Prime Minister, the Queen, David Beckham, and Simon Cowell. And they'd heard of all of them apart from Simon Cowell.
That made you feel
No
good.
one on the streets of Shanghai had ever heard of him. I love that moment. I made sure he knew immediately.
Hey, we got Brooklyn Decker down the hall, so I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she could join the conversation.
I'm gonna clear her mic. I'm gonna get out of here so she can
look
have
at
the
you. Pretty girl coming in.
lady, the pretty lady.
Pretty lady
Piers,
coming
you want to
in.
hang, or you got to go?
Actually, I've got to go quite. So I can give you a little bit more.
Can I ask Piers another question
Okay.
before we go?
Yeah. There's a couple more things I want to.
I'm
Let's get
curious-
Brooklyn walking down the hall.
I'm curious as to how you feel, because the media in general, it's the media again, and Fox is very conservative, and other ones are very biased liberally. Where do you think the media is fairly balanced? Like, where are they balanced? Where there's kind of like both ideologies.
This will sound completely self-serving, but it's one of the reasons I joined CNN. CNN's the
Because you're a lefty.
No, but I think if you watch CNN, you don't get bombarded with partisan. And by the way, I love watching, when I'm in the right mood, partisan television. Right? I love watching Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly. I like watching Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow. Depending on the mood I'm in, like most journalists, I switch around anyway. I think a lot of issues now sort of circumnavigate left and right anyway. So I like watching them. But do I want to actually do that myself? No, I think there's a really important position for CNN right now, which is globally, the reason that they are the most trusted name in news as their advertising goes is because they really are. They're independent. And people accuse them of being liberal. I don't see that in the programming that I watch, and I've been here a few months now watching it. They try and toe the straight line whilst expressing opinion that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be pigeonholed right or left. It's important so that Americans have a choice. If you're in the mood for a bit of right-wing whacking, turn on Bill O'Reilly and hear him whack away, and it's hugely popular. I know whacking means something else here, doesn't it?
Yes.
I don't mean it quite the way.
Probably a lot more fun than the way you're meaning it.
Toss off.
You have a choice. I believe in choice. I really do. I think everybody knows what they're getting when they watch Fox News. You know what you're getting when you're watching MSNBC, and you should know what you're getting when you're watching CNN. If you want to have unpartisan, unbiased reporting, put on CNN for a bit. If you're in the mood for a bit of a rough and tumble, put on the others. But my job, as I see it, is to make the independent voice of CNN more opinionated. I mean, the stuff we've been talking about today, I don't think I could be honestly positioned as left or right based on this discussion.
Right.
There will be people like Bill O'Reilly listening to it who might want to pick up some of the things I say and say, he's a lefty, and there'll be people on the left going, actually, he's a righty.
Oh, taken out of context stuff is the best
exactly.
for making
and
it look
and I
quick
don't care about
soundbite.
that. You know, but in the end, I've expressed what I believe to be opinions which are perfectly sound opinions, but open to debate. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. Where it strays too much into too predictable, I always know when a news story breaks exactly how MSNBC and Fox will report it. When you're that predictable, there's something wrong. News is not that predictable, and it shouldn't be. What's happening in Egypt is a classic example. Most Americans, I think, are quite confused. Is Mubarak a good or bad guy? Because he's been a great ally to America, and make no bones about it, he has been.
His people love him.
But he's a dictator to his people.
Right.
Exactly in the way, not quite as bad, but in a similar vein in recent years to Saddam Hussein. He's made himself stinking rich. He's terrorized his people through his military police. He's all intents and purposes a pretty bad guy. But at the same time, he's protected Israel from a lot of outrage that would have come their way without Egypt's support. He's been a great ally to America, both in terms of Israel and in terms of oil and other stuff. He's been an important player on the side of America. But if you're watching Bill O'Reilly or you're watching Rachel Maddow, you would be drawn to a certain position about him, which is probably neither is right. The middle position is pretty well right. The CNN position will be, look at this in its totality. And this guy is good and bad. And he's not very bad and he's not very good. He's kind of in the middle, like most of the Middle Eastern leaders are. And he's been useful to America and a friend to America, whilst being bad to his people.
And that is why people don't like us, too, a lot of times, because a lot of them don't like us because we do pick and choose who we're self-righteously angry at. Like, if you're a prick, but you're our prick, it's like Ahmadinejad we hate, but Saddam we loved. And, it is kind of selective.
I don't like when people get on the United States' ass.
I just wanted to say Ahmadinejad and prove I knew his name. I just wanted to sound smart. That's
You pronounced that correctly.
I shoehorned that in.
I wasn't expecting that on this
I'm
show.
a total phony. I'm a phony.
I don't like when they take what alliances we had 20, 30 years ago and criticize us now for it, because there was a time for a certain alliance. If it turned bad over the years and this leader that we sold weapons to for years, all of a sudden we find out, he's a nasty dictator to his people, he's terrible. And they go, well, you supplied him. It's like it made sense during the Cold War to get into bed with some people that weren't all that good.
Well, I can name them for you. Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden,
yes.
Mubarak. I mean, all these people at some stages have been friends of the West.
Because they were our enemy's enemy.
Correct.
So to catch shit for that seems really odd that people won't look at the big picture and say, we had to do that.
We have to bring Brooklyn.
Yeah, we got it.
Let's bring her in.
Absolutely.
Can we just bring her in?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a blow.
Kevin.
All right, Kevin.
Tell me
Take
to
it
give up
easy,
this
Kevin.
mic.
Yes.
Red State, March 5th, Radio City Music Hall. Tickets and info, ticket info, dates, coopersdell.com.
And soon to be on Piers Morgan's show on
Yes.
CNN.
Next week.
Yes.
I'm
In theaters October
intimidated
19th.
now because you're just the smartest man I've listened to speak this week, and I know it's only Monday, but still.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was sitting there like my jaw was slack. I was like, I guess I'm not going to be able to use any Die Hard jokes.
Like he's the smartest guy in the Opie and Anthony room. That's not a great compliment.
Good seeing you guys.
All right, man. We'll see you soon.
Kevin, thanks, man.
Take care.
Very good.
Oh, could I be in one of your movies?
Of course.
Take it easy, man.
Wow, was that the
wanna
standard
sit?
answer or what?